Hey everyone! Alright, so today they are going to be going over the Cleric. Now I'm just going to let you know that if you were not following the playtest, Cleric received fairly minor changes overall in the playtest. Just looking at my notes here to remind myself, at level 1 you got Divine Order, which is a fairly minor feature that allows a little bit of customization. You can get heavy armor training and martial weapon training. Of course, a lot of clerics are going to be perfectly happy using medium armor and shield and using cantrips, so they don't have a lot of use for that. The other one gives you an extra cleric cantrip and benefit with skills that are appropriate for the cleric. And so they're both pretty minor, but I'm sure they'll talk about it. Channel Divinity gave you an option. So in the Player's Handbook 2014, Channel Divinity through the base class is just for turn undead. And then in the playtest, they added Divine Spark. That gave you a different way to use your Channel Divinity. And so I'm sure they'll tell us what happened with that. Then we got, so in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, there's an optional class feature called Blessed Strikes that allows your cleric to do extra damage with a melee weapon or do extra damage with a cantrip. And that was in the playtest, hard-coded into the cleric, so we'll find out what happened with that. Then Divine Intervention at level 10 had a significant redesign. This was maybe the biggest change to the base class, and so we'll see what happened with that as well, I'm sure. And the Greater Divine Intervention at level 20 also had redesign in the playtest, so we'll see where that landed, I'm sure. Then we have 4 subclasses we're expecting to see: Life, Light, Trickery, and War. And in the playtest, the one that had the most drastic redesign is Trickery Cleric. Had just total redesign. Of the entire Cleric, it's easily the thing that had the greatest amount of redesign. Very powerful. And I playtested it, and it was a blast. So we'll see where they landed with Trickery Domain. I think they can go through Life, Light, and War fairly quickly because those did not see as massive redesign. They clearly didn't have the desire to have the massive redesign, though they did change from the playtest versions. So hopefully they will go over the specifics on that so I can talk about them. I have read the Player's Handbook. I am under an NDA, which means I can't reveal anything in there. But if they reveal it, I can talk about it, and that's the point of these videos. And on August 1st, my NDA is over. I have the embargo released, and I can start talking about the Player's Handbook. I can show you screenshots, all that stuff, and I am working on that content right now. If you are not a subscriber, make sure to subscribe, so on August 1st, you're getting that content right away. So, let's see what they have to say about the Cleric.
Hello everyone, today we are talking about clerics. You know, those folks that keep you alive. Playing new things in all the classes and the subclasses. That is also true for clerics.
One of the things that we wanted to make sure we did with the cleric, which is also a very popular class, is, as we've done with all of the classes, protect their core identity while looking for ways to amp up the fun, particularly for clerics and others who focus sometimes on healing, although of course many of us have played clerics who are all about smiting or something other than healing. But we wanted to make sure that anyone who is focusing on healing in the game really could feel good about it. And that's why we talked in our video about spells, about the buffs to many of the game's healing spells. And so clerics in particular are going to really feel that improvement and feel like that.
So if you didn't watch the video on spells, just a very quick summary. So basically for the cure spells, you're getting an extra die. So if you do cast cure wounds at first level, you're getting 2d8 plus your spellcasting modifier. If it's healing word, it's 2d4. Same thing for the mass cure wounds and for mass healing word. And then Prayer of Healing was also changed, and you can, once per long rest, gain the benefits of a short rest on top of some healing with that spell. On top of some healing? I don't remember.
Yes.
But you get the benefits of a short rest. That's the big thing. So yeah, there's lots of buffing to healing spells, but those are the specifics. And today I just finished a coffee, so I'm doing water. Let's get on with the rest here.
If they decide to spend their turn or part of their turn in battle helping their friends or themselves get back into the fight, we're hoping they're going to feel far better about dedicating their playtime to that healing activity. Now, when it comes to the class itself, right away at first level, people are going to get a brand new feature called Divine Order. Both the Druid and the Cleric now have this feature at first level that allows them to decide if they want to go more in the spellcasting direction or lean a little bit more into the armor and weapon direction. Now, Clerics and Druids both have, at the baseline, sort of decent weapon and armor capability and are very solid spellcasters. So this choice is really a choice of emphasis or of spice. Whichever one you choose, you're still going to have, again, decent armor and weapon.
Yeah, and that's an honest answer. Clerics are already okay. They have pretty good armor training. They have shield training. You have decent weapons to choose from. And you already have a good number of spells, and this is very much it's quite a bit flavor. It's not like a strong mechanical benefit.
As well as very formidable spellcasting. If you decide to go in Divine Order with the new Protector option, it means right at first level you're going to start with proficiency with martial weapons and heavy armor. This is how you can make the classic first edition cleric decked out in heavy armor and wielding a mace. But we've also acknowledged that over the decades, many clerics have instead leaned more in a kind of robe-wearing, divine magic wielding aesthetic direction. And so the Thaumaturge option supports that aesthetic by giving you an extra cantrip and also making it so that, and again, this is similar to what we did in the Druid, buffing some of your ability checks with a bonus equal to your wisdom modifier. And in the case of the cleric, the ability checks that get buffed are your intelligence, arcana, and religion checks, making it so that the thaumaturge, even if their intelligence isn't super high, can tap into their divine magic to give them a sense of information about either general magic in the form of arcana or about religion.
Perfect.
Now, in spellcasting, which is also at first level, there is an important change there where now clerics, every time they level up, can swap out one of their cantrips. Now you can say, oh, okay, I'm not using this cantrip as much as I thought, and so you can change. At second level, clerics get their iconic Channel Divinity feature, just as before. It still includes the option to turn undead, which again goes all the way back to first edition of clerics channeling their divine might to drive back the forces of undeath.
They should leave those undead alone. It's not fair.
But we have also now added a brand new channel divinity option for all clerics called Divine Spark. And this is a really fun channel divinity option where the cleric decides if they're going to channel this raw divine power either to harm someone or help them. So you can either deal damage with it or heal somebody with it. And we did this because looking over not only the subclasses for the cleric in this book, but as well as the other subclasses that have come out for the cleric over the years, clerics, depending on subclass choice, have had sort of varying use for their channel divinity. Like if
that and I'm glad he brings that up because again, I think he's totally correct there. when I look at the subclasses presented here in the Player's Handbook, I see pretty good options for use of my Channel Divinity through them. But if we look at previous releases, that's not always the case. Sometimes Channel Divinities aren't very good. Like, I'd say that Nature Clerics don't get a lot of good Channel Divinity options, or they might be circumstantial. And so if you don't come across Undead, and you don't come across, in the case of Nature Clerics, beasts, and you could end up not having any way to use your Channel Divinity. So Divine Spark is a way to ensure that no matter what subclass you're playing, you will definitely have a chance to use your Channel Divinity if you want to. I definitely like that. I also like, I should mention back with the Divine Order, with the Thaumaturge option, I do like that. One little frustration for clerics is that because religion is based on intelligence, the wizard tends to be better at religion checks than the cleric, and you would think the cleric would be good at religion checks. So I do appreciate that there's an option to make that better, even though mechanically it's not a big deal, right? Like, it's not a power thing, but a thematic thing. I like that as well.
If you are in a campaign with few or no undead, turn undead does you no good.
Yeah.
And then some subclasses have Channel Divinity options that are useful every session, and then other subclasses have Channel Divinity options that are useful less frequently. With that reality in mind, we created Divine Spark to give every cleric, regardless of subclass, a Channel Divinity option that is likely to be useful in every single session of play, because pretty much every session, at least one point, you're going to want to deal damage or heal somebody.
I'm going to mention something else here as well. As I mentioned before, with the subclasses that are in this book, I think you have Channel Divinity options that you should be able to use most of the time. So what he's saying here is that as they're making this book, they weren't just thinking about the subclasses in this book, they're actually considering previous subclasses. So when we're talking about are you going to be able to continue to play the previous stuff, I think there's certain subclasses that don't work particularly well with the new rules. I did a video on Shepherd Druid not long ago, explaining that one just doesn't really work very well. But for the most part, I think they work reasonably well, and it's encouraging to think that they were thinking of you if you were going to continue to use that content.
Unless you're having a very peaceful shopping montage session.
Yeah, right. That's fair.
Unless, the cleric discovers that the shopkeep is undead and they need to drive them away with Turn Undead. Now, that classic option, Turn Undead, it itself has been redesigned. As much as we enjoy the classic Turn Undead of the undead who are affected scampering far away, we wanted this to be a bit less disruptive for the cleric, because it is often not useful for the cleric for the undead to now be half a mile away when it runs out.
Right, and spread around the map, yeah.
Exactly. So Turn Undead still, if it affects an undead creature, it still shuts them down in terms of, being able to do much of use for them, but no longer has them scrambling from here to the next town.
And what he's referring to is in the 2014 rules, the turned undead had to use their action to dash, so they could move their movement away from you, and then they could move their movement away from you a second time. And basically, the new turn undead is more effective because it shuts them down with a condition beyond just frightened. And they still move away from you, but they're not going to be able to move at that double speed.
And we found that not only in the Unearthed Arcana process, but also in our own playtests, that this new version of Turn Undead is a lot of fun.
And this is like a debuff or damage, or?
So what it does now is the undead creature is incapacitated and frightened.
There you go. So instead of dashing with their action, because they're incapacitated, they can't take any actions. This is probably even more effective. And Turn Undead has always been an effective tool against undead, and it's potentially even a little bit better now. Not to the point where I think it's a problem, but it is still very, very good, and probably even better than it was before.
For 1 minute. And it does try to move as far as it can from you on its turns, but it's no longer dashing.
Yeah, okay.
And it also it's clearer with the rest of the system how it's behaving, because it has now the incapacitated condition as well as the frightened condition. And those two things were implied before, and now it's explicit.
Okay.
Okay, I didn't think about that, but once in a while he'll talk a little bit behind the curtain, and you get it. If a undead creature is not incapacitated and has to use its action to dash, what happens with its reactions, and what happens if it has bonus actions? Can it still use those freely? And like you said, it was implied, probably not, but if you're just reading the rules very literally, maybe they could.
The new version of Turn Undead is then buffed later at level 5 by another new feature called Seer Undead. And with this feature, you now have the option, when you use Turn Undead, to blast the undead creatures that you're turning with radiant energy and deal damage to them. This is a way for you to have your Turn Undead have an offensive capability without requiring the undead to hit a particular challenge rating threshold to be destroyed by your Turn Undead. So the 2014...
Yeah, so the 2014 version, there was a certain challenge rating, and I believe it's scaled with level, that would just be destroyed if you turn them. Now what will happen is you'll do damage to them, regardless of their challenge rating. And maybe you will destroy them if they're of a weak challenge rating. But even if they're a stronger challenge rating, you will have some additional impact on them beyond just turning them.
Version of Turn Undead, when you got to higher level, would just simply destroy certain undead creatures. And what we found is the problem with that is it was this very kind of all or nothing thing. And then that also meant that you gained no benefit against creatures that were not within that very specific challenge rating range. We replaced that primarily because we wanted to give you a buff that you were happy to have no matter what the CR was of the undead creature. And so now you have this ability to, you don't have to worry about what the CR is. Once you have it, you have the option of blasting it with radiant damage. And the advantage of this new feature is eventually this radiant damage will get high enough that you will still pretty much automatically destroy very low CR undead.
Yeah.
So you will often, particularly if you have lucky damage rolls for the radiant damage, still incinerate the undead that you're turning. But even when you don't do that, you're still going to be able to pump out some radiant damage, even against that high CR lich.
Yeah, perfect. Makes sense.
Now at level 7 in the Cleric, we also have a new feature called Blessed Strikes. And Blessed Strikes is a replacement for two different features that appeared previously in subclasses. Cleric subclasses in the past tended to have either a feature called Divine Strike or one called Potent Spellcasting.
And what he said here, by the way, I should say, is clarified as well that in the rules, is that this is a replacement for the, I think, level 8 feature that subclasses got. So if you are using an old subclass, you won't get that feature anymore. You'll get this feature instead. It's a replacement.
Divine Strike pushed the Cleric toward weapon use and potent spellcasting. It's in the name, buffed the Cleric spellcasting, specifically the Cleric's cantrips. And because we now let you at first level decide which of those directions you want to lean in, we wanted you to then, following on from that, get to make a choice between Divine Strike and Potent Spellcasting at level 7, rather than automatically giving you one of those as part of a particular subclass. And we found that doing it the old way kind of pigeonholed certain subclasses in ways that wasn't always how the players wanted to play that subclass. You know, we might have decided that a particular subclass got Divine Strike rather than Potent Spellcasting, but the player who chose that subclass might decide, but I'm not interested in wearing armor and being in melee. I want to actually hang back, and would really have enjoyed having Potent Spellcasting instead. So with that in mind, we've put the power in the player's hands to decide which of those directions that you go in. We also, this is a case where we have a note in the feature itself that if you happen to take the new version of the Cleric, but wed it to a subclass from an older book, you do not get both the Potent Spellcasting or Divine Strike from the subclass.
And I was just thinking in my head, did I reveal something that I wasn't supposed to reveal? But he said it, so I'm good.
Class, as well as whatever you choose from the base class. You just get one.
Perfect.
And that's explained right here in the Cleric itself.
Okay.
Now, when we get to level 10, we have a new version of Divine Intervention. Now, previously, Divine Intervention was a style of game design that I sometimes refer to as Mother May I game design, where the player basically had to ask the DM's permission for something to happen. And also, this was locked behind a die roll that would determine whether or not your feature even did anything.
Yeah.
So our goal with the new Divine Intervention is we wanted to give the Cleric certainty that their class feature would actually do something. And so in the new design, you just simply use it, and you choose any Cleric spell of level 5 or lower that doesn't require a reaction to cast, and you cast it. It's that simple. And then you can't use it again until you finish a long rest. So what this means...
All right, so if you listen to what he said, what he has just described is the exact version of Divine Intervention that you saw in the playtest. I have a concern with this feature, and I was sorry to see that they didn't address it. He said you can choose any Cleric spell of 5th level or lower as long as it doesn't use a reaction, which includes spells that have a longer casting time than one action. In some cases, a lot longer casting time than an action. And that is a bit of a concern for me in terms of game balance. One example that is on the Insight Check playtest that I linked yesterday is we were playing with Pack Tactics, and he played a Cleric, and he used Divine Intervention to cast the Hollow spell. Well, read the Hollow spell in your 2014 Player's Handbook and see if you want that to be something that a Cleric can do as an action. I think it's too much. But that is the way it went through. So, Divine Intervention unchanged from the playtest.
Means is once you reach level 10, you as a Cleric, regardless of what Cleric spells you have prepared, have in your back pocket the ability to pick any Cleric spell of 5th level or lower and decide, I'm casting that now. So it still...
And I get why they didn't put the restriction of one action casting time in. It's because they're thinking of Raise Dead, right? You definitely want your Divine Intervention to be able to do Raise Dead, and it has a longer than a one action casting time. So I get their reasoning. I think it's going to be one of those features you're going to just need to have a social contract with your players on that one about potential abuse.
Serves the function that Divine Intervention had before, which is sort of fishing for a divine get-out-of-jail-free card.
Yeah.
And I think the feedback we got on this was very positive. And what's also really nice about it is when you cast the spell, you don't expend a spell slot, and you do not need material components.
Yeah.
This means, yes, you could choose Raise Dead, which is a 5th level spell, and cast it.
There's no question the design of this, they're thinking Raise Dead. And then optimizers are thinking Hollow.
Calling on divine intervention to raise someone from death. And we designed this very specifically to make that happen, because what else feels like divine intervention than bringing back somebody from the dead?
You are going to ruin the diamond economy in D&D. All these NPCs that sell diamonds are just...
And using it for Raise Dead, or even Restoration, which also has a costly component, I actually really like that. So as long as you stay away from the obvious broken stuff, I actually do like the feature. But like I said, you just make sure you're playing with people who like the same play style as you do. If you like the idea of being able to do Hollow as an action with a 10th level Cleric, great. As long as your table also thinks it's great.
In all of their shops outside all the temples in D&D cities.
Yeah. Exactly 500 gold piece worth of diamond.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Now, at level 14, we improve Blessed Strikes, and so whichever option you chose earlier at level 7, Divine Strike or Potent Spellcasting, it gets even better. And then finally, at level 20, we have Greater Divine Intervention, which now lets you choose the Wish spell. And the Wish spell, as the divine intervention that you're reaching out for, and gives you all of the magical flexibility that Wish gives a spellcaster. And the Wish spell has been expanded in the spell chapter. It has several new built-in options that do not risk you triggering the
monkey's paw effect.
The fatigue that Wish can impose upon a person.
Yeah.
And it also has further guidance in the spell of what happens to you if you try to mess with gods, or even worse, with the Lady of Pain.
Okay, so I'm re-recording this bit because I had to edit myself out. Yes, you will be able to, with your 20th level Cleric, access the Wish spell. There is a lot more to this feature. So he didn't really get into the specifics, so you're going to need to read it to get into the specifics unless they talk about it more in the weeks to come. Of course, I'll tell you exactly how it works once we get past August 1st. But just know that you'll definitely want to read the feature, but your Cleric at level 20 will have access to Wish for all those many 20th level Clerics that you actually play.
Like our other dedicated spellcasting classes, the spell list has been expanded, not only because of new spells that are in the book, like Summon Celestial, but also because of spells that were already in the game in 2014 that clerics now have access to. And our cleric subclasses definitely also then get to make use of the bolstered spell selection because of their domain spells. So shall we dive into the life domain?
Yeah, let's get into the
So the base Cleric as a whole, I think we saw fairly minor changes. You know, you can choose whether you want heavy armor or an extra cantrip, and it doesn't matter what subclass you pick, because in 2014 you can get heavy armor depending on your subclass. We get a little more flexibility with Channel Divinity. I think if you're choosing the subclasses in this player's handbook, you're going to probably have a better use of your Channel Divinity, but if you're playing an older subclass, that could definitely come in handy, and it's always nice to have more flexibility. I like that Sear Undead replaces Destroy Undead, allowing you to do something to all undead beyond just turning them, rather than, like Jeremy Crawford said, an all or nothing thing. Instead, it just kind of improves your turn undead for everybody. Then the Blessed Strikes working its way into the main class, and then you're going to choose when you get the feature, whether you're doing the damage to cantrips or weapons, and that's going to improve. But none of these things are huge. The biggest change is to Divine Intervention and the Capstone, which is Greater Divine Intervention. They work significantly differently. And I do want to be clear that I do like Divine Intervention. It's just one of those things where, because there is one interaction that is really, really, really good and potentially broken, potentially game-breaking, depending on your table. Some tables really enjoy those kind of interactions, and they should use it. And if your table doesn't want to use it, then that's something that should be agreed upon with the cleric player beforehand. So I do think there is a need for a conversation with the cleric player to see what they're going to do with that feature. Make sure it aligns with what you want at your table. Make sure it aligns with what the other players want at their table. And whatever it is, as long as you all agree, I think you're going to really enjoy the feature. So that's the cleric. Again, not huge changes. Let's get into the subclasses.
Life domain. This is kind of the classic cleric.
The life domain cleric is meant to be the preeminent healer in the game. I often like to tell people that if they really love playing a healer and they like the aesthetic of the cleric, the life domain is fantastic. You really cannot go wrong choosing this if you want to be a character who's all about helping other people. We took the really excellent features in this subclass and we fine-tuned them, altering some of the spell selection in the domain spell list so that the life domain cleric would be even more on theme in terms of their healing prowess. And we've even done subtle tweaks that people might not notice immediately, like, for instance, Preserve Life now actually works on undead and constructs.
Oh, fantastic.
The fact that a number of healing spells did not work on undead and constructs actually created a number of design headaches for benevolent undead or constructs that might be in a player's group, either because they summoned them or they became undead but are still, heroic. Or there are constructs.
Yeah, we ran into this with the Reborn lineage at the time.
Exactly. And so people will notice that not just in Preserve Life, but many places in the player's handbook where before certain healing effects didn't work on undead and constructs, that has largely been removed. And instead, when the monster manual comes out, people will find that certain monsters, particularly monsters that are made of like shadow stuff from the negative energy plane, we are exploring it being a feature of the monster themselves. It isn't even that they can't be healed, it's that they're actually harmed by healing spells.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense.
And so that...
I believe it was 3rd edition in 3.5, where undead took damage from healing spells. So it looks like they're taking some direction from that, potentially. It sounds like they haven't landed fully on... They're likely still working on the monster manual, because it's not coming out till February, so they still have some time before that gets sent to the printers. So it looks like not all the design is nailed down for the monster manual yet, but there's a tradition to having healing spells do damage to undead in the game. I thought he was just going to say we were going to say that healing doesn't work on them. Well, who cares? Who's healing the Wraith?
That actually is allowing us to bring back some flavor that has existed in earlier editions of healers being able to turn their healing spells on certain kind of fell creatures. But for that, people will have to wait for the new monster manual.
That's awesome, though. That's a great change.
But in the meantime, you will also be able to restore life to, say, because again, I know you as the ever lover of warlocks.
Yes.
If the warlock has a skeleton in the group, the cleric can now heal their friend's skeleton.
I will laugh. That is perfect. That brings us to the light domain.
Okay, so the life domain, as Jeremy Crawford indicated, very minor changes, just tweaks. If you like the life domain in the 2014 Player's Handbook, rest assured, it's pretty much the same. There's some wording changes. There's slight rules changes, like he said, that are mostly quite subtle. And but it is very much going to feel like the old life domain.
Another popular subclass for the Cleric.
The light domain has had quite a bit of revision within it. Part of that was based on us wanting to make it a little less one note and being all about fire, 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 fire.
What's wrong with that?
Partly because the light domain has always been meant to represent sort of divine illumination.
Yeah.
Which fire is certainly a fun expression of that.
Right.
But it's not the fire domain, it's the light domain.
Yeah.
And so we've preserved some of the, tasty, fiery bits. So, don't worry, Fireball is still here. But we wanted to also bring in some spells in the domain list that are about vision, about,
And we saw in the playtest, we saw, I believe it was see invisibility was included, and so if you want to see the changes to the domain spell list, you can see it in Unearthed Arcana.
I mean, sort of metaphorically about vision. And so there's some divination spells here that are about wiping away falsehood, that sort of thing. And so that's why, you'll see things here like scrying and see invisibility, that sort of thing. Arcane Eye, these are here. We also made it so that the level 3 warding flare feature is usable right away, whether you're the person being targeted or somebody else.
Oh.
And what he's referring to is in the 2014 version, that was the scaling. So you had one feature where you could impose disadvantage on an attack against you as a reaction, number of times equal to your wisdom modifier. And then I think it was like your level 6 feature allowed you to do the same thing with the same resource, same pool of resource, to apply to another creature, and so they're combining it, which makes sense to me. It wasn't really a new feature.
Okay. Used to be you had to wait to a higher level to have the I help my friend version of it. You now get that right away. Then later at level 6, when you get improved warding flare, when you use warding flare to protect somebody, you now also can give them temporary hit points. And you also now regain all uses of warding flare whenever you finish a short or a long rest.
Oh, that's fine.
And that's a nice scaling, actually, of the feature. One of the issue with warding flare in the 2014 version is at level 1, because of course in 2014 you can get it at level 1, it's pretty good because most creatures attack you once, and you weren't using your reaction for anything else. You're a first level character. So you got these 3 uses of imposing disadvantage, great. But when you get to a higher level, creatures are attacking several times, and you have potentially reaction spells or other reactions gained through other features. So expanding a reaction just to get disadvantage on that little one attack might be okay, but it felt like it fell behind. And so recovering all the uses on a short rest, and you're going to give out some temporary hit points when you use it to protect your allies, definitely improves the relevance of the feature as you get to level 6. So you might actually continue using it.
Fantastic.
So the light domain cleric is going to be able to use their signature ability, warding flare, more often, and it's even more potent than it was before. We've also taken a look at Corona of Light, and we've now made it so that it imposes disadvantage on saving throws against your Radiance of the Dawn, in addition to any spells that deal fire or radiant damage. We wanted there to be more internal synergy here because we didn't want it to just benefit your spells, but then you have your channel divinity option to just emit a whole bunch of light and have it not benefit. So this also is a theme you and I have returned to in these videos of more synergy, more feeling like you can combine your abilities with your friends' abilities, but also, very importantly, combine your own abilities with each other in new ways. And I'm excited to see how people combine things that we haven't even imagined yet.
Yeah, that is. I'm doing a lot of like combing through this book already and trying to come up with different combinations. That's part of the fun.
Now, next up we have the Trickery.
Okay, so light domain. So he said bigger changes, and they are bigger changes. Like Life Cleric is very much the same. Light domain had more significant changes. I still don't think it's like hugely changed. You're getting Warding Flare gets the combined effect as soon as you get it at level 3. Well, before you got the reduced effect at 1 and the higher effect at 6, so they're just kind of throwing it all in the middle. It does get a bit of a scaling, but I don't think it's ever going to be a major feature for you. And the domain spells, I mean, what people really care about is, let's be honest, does it still have Fireball? Yes, it still has Fireball, and you'll probably use 3rd level slots on Fireball once in a while instead of Spirit Guardians all the time. And that's great, right? That's what you want to do with a Light Cleric. And the change to Corona of Light is technically a boost, but I don't think it's that big a deal. So I think the Light Domain has been boosted a little bit, but not in a dramatic way.
Domain.
I love the Trickery domain. This is one of the best. I love this subclass. I love the theme of it, and the spell list was always fantastic for the Trickery domain, but now the functionality of like the keystone abilities are really, really good.
And the Trickery domain, in many ways, is the foil to the Light domain. Mm-hmm. Many of the subclass quartets in the book are often actually 2 duos.
Yeah.
And in the Cleric, the Trickery domain, which is all about illusion and sort of pranks,
deception,
and being the trickster, is the counter to the light of revelation, seeing everything as it really is. And then similarly, the Life domain Cleric has its foil in this class in the form of the War domain Cleric. One being all about restoring vitality to people, and the other about destroying things. And so, the Cleric, we have this fun axis going on with these 4 subclasses. Now, the Trickery domain, as you said, got some really nice updates. And it starts right away in Blessing of the Trickster, which now the Cleric can actually use on themselves, which they used to not be able to. And it used to last just for an hour, but now it lasts until the end of your next long rest.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so Blessing of the Trickster in 2014 allowed the Trickery Cleric they touch another creature. That creature got advantage on dexterity stealth checks for an hour. And he talked about it lasts until your next long rest. Well, the thing is the 2014 version didn't have a resource cost, so you could do it over and over again. So if you wanted, Bob the Rogue to always have advantage on dexterity stealth checks, you could do that. You could just keep using it on them over and over and over again, and so they would always have it. But kind of annoying, right? Since it ends if you use the feature again, that's having it last till the next long rest just makes sense. It's just a little less clunky, but it's not necessarily a buff. It just makes it smoother. And then being able to choose yourself as a valid target is going to make a lot of players happy, because that was one of the complaints about that feature, is that you couldn't use it on yourself. So now you can. I don't think that's a huge power boost, because you're going to use it on somebody regardless, right? And only one person. But kind of a quality of life thing. If you want to make the Trickery Cleric a stealth expert, which I guess you might want to do because you're a Trickery Cleric, right? So it does, work with that better.
Okay. Which is a really nice way to ensure that people can use this for maybe extended infiltrations. Particularly if the Cleric uses it on somebody else, and it wouldn't be around to, in the past, refresh it after it wore off after an hour.
Oh yeah, that's a very good point, yeah.
So Invoke Duplicity, which is of course, the the signature ability of this subclass got improved in a number of ways.
You almost can't compare it to the old version, right? It's almost like a brand new feature. So he has a lot to go through here.
Both the base feature as well as in the improvements that come later at level 17. One is you can now summon up your illusory duplicate as a bonus action instead of an action.
Perfect.
And you do not have to concentrate on it anymore.
Thank you.
Which is huge.
Because
that was so difficult, yeah.
The combination before of it taking your entire action and you having to concentrate on it meant you were in some ways being shut down in two ways. You were spending a whole turn bringing it out, and then you couldn't at the same time have any of the cleric's really nice concentration spells going simultaneously.
Yeah.
And so we wanted to address that when we revisited this subclass, so that the subclass felt like it was playing nice with the rest of the class,
Yeah.
and not shutting your own class down through its use.
And again, that is a lot of the change in design is what you want to do during a turn happens so much faster.
Yes. In the higher level improved duplicity up at level 17, that used to create multiple duplicates. You now just have one duplicate. But what we've now done is that your duplicate now assists not just you, but also your allies when it comes to conferring advantage on attack rolls. And when the illusion vanishes, it now heals. You can have it heal somebody next to it. We wanted, again, this illusion to be more cleric-y, so that it truly felt like you're not just a trickster, you are a trickster cleric. And so that's why we brought in more of this element of you being able to assist your team in addition to assisting yourself.
There's another really juicy add-on to this ability.
Yes, between level 3 and 17, there is now a brand new feature, and that is whenever you take the bonus action to create the illusion, you can teleport, swapping places with the illusion. And this not only gives you some really fun mobility, but it makes it so that the tricksy cleric can mess with enemies even more, because if suddenly you're swapping positions, they think you're over there, but you're actually over here.
Yeah.
And then on top of it, we modified the domain spell list, and that's something we...
Okay, so they're finished with the Trickery domain, so here is the big news, is that if you were following the playtest. If you were not following the playtest, this is a brand new subclass. You're just going to have to read it, but he basically went over how it works. But it is really significantly improved from the previous version. However, if you were following the playtest, there have been some power downgrades. He talked about there is a feature between level 3 and 17. Well, obviously that's the level 6 feature, right? And the level 6 feature now allows you to switch places with the duplicate when you create it. That, in the playtest, was part of the level 3 feature. And then at level 6, you had the ability to cast, I think it was illusion spells as a bonus action. So this replaces that. So there has been a power downgrade. I still really like this. I think it's very, very cool. I'm excited to give the revamped version a try. Trickery has always been one of my favorite cleric domains, and in the new player's handbook, it's definitely my favorite. This is my favorite cleric domain, and one of those subclasses that in this book really just has me excited. And those are scattered all over classes, whether it's the Oath of the Sea Druid, or the Great Old One Warlock, or the World Tree Barbarian. And well, for Cleric, it's Trickery. Very cool subclass. And the rebalancing, I get it. And I mentioned at the time, when they came out with the Trickery domain, I said, I love this, but it's maybe overtuned. They apparently agreed with me.
We did in all of them to try to make the list of spells that you have from this subclass as thematic and as fun as possible. So finally, we have the war domain.
Yeah.
The war.
Yeah, and he hinted at something there too. So he said that they have adjusted the domain spells for Trickery. So just be aware, because one of the premier features of the 2014 version was you got some super juicy spells compared to other domain subclasses, and I would say now it's closer in balance to the other domain or the other subclasses.
Domain has been improved across the board. One of the ways that you'll see that immediately is in Guided Strike. You can now, right from the start, use this to benefit other people. It used to be that you could only use it on yourself when you first got it. And this is for people who don't remember, this is the Channel Divinity where you can just give yourself a gigantic +10 to hit.
Yeah.
And people have seen Omen Drawn do this many times in Acquisitions Incorporated. But you had to wait till a much higher level to be able to use it on other people.
Yeah.
Now you can use it on yourself or other people right away.
Oh, wow, okay.
And we did this similar to some of the changes we made in the Trickery domain. We did this so that this would be more cleric-y right from the start. The whole cleric class is about interactions with other party members, because even if you're a cleric who isn't focusing on healing, clerics still have a number of abilities that otherwise buff their friends, and so we're always looking for ways to make sure that even when clerics might be leaning more in a sort of damage dealing direction, that there still is an interaction element when it comes to their buddies. Now, the advantage of doing this also means we free up a class feature slot where we can then put in something new, so that you're not having an entire feature eaten up by now you can use this on your friends.
Yeah.
So there's a double advantage to us making a change like this. We also, in the War Priest ability, which you get at 3rd level along with Guided Strike and your domain spells, we have made it so that you can now make an unarmed strike with the bonus action attack, not just a weapon strike. This is actually something we've done in a number of places in the New Player's Handbook, where previous abilities that only worked with weapons now also work with unarmed strikes. We're doing this not only for the sake of multi-classing, but also because we know that people, regardless of what class they have, sometimes like the fantasy of playing an unarmed character. And so we wanted to support that. We have also made it so that you regain the uses of your War Priest ability when you complete a short or a long rest. So you're also going to be...
Yeah, so that's a significant change. So the old version is pretty simple. You take the attack action, you can then use your bonus action to make an additional weapon attack a number of times equal to your wisdom modifier per long rest. And they have now, in addition to what he said there, they will also get their uses back after a short rest. So that'll be a lot more uses in an adventuring day.
Be able to use this more often. At level 6 with the War God's Blessing, we reuse the old name, but...
And if you were following the playtest, notice something. If you look at War Priest in the playtest, there's something that was on there that is he no longer mentions it, and there's a reason for that.
In terms of functionality, it is brand new because now we've made it so that you can burn Channel Divinity uses to cast Shield of Faith or Spiritual Weapon. We decided we wanted to make the War Domain Cleric the type of cleric who has the easiest time casting two of the most iconic low-level
Yeah.
war-themed cleric spells, Shield of Faith and Spiritual Weapon. One defensive and the other one offensive. And so that means that the War Domain cleric, more than any other cleric, will be able to shield their allies or bring out that spectral weapon to bash foes easier than any other kind of cleric.
This is a nasty spell list, too. Steel, Wind, Strike is in here.
Oh yeah, the spell list has been revised in ways that are really exciting.
Yeah.
So the Steel Wind Strike, this is a great example of how all the domain...
All right, so there is more to War God's Blessing than was revealed here that I won't be able to talk about yet. But it's better than advertised. I'll say that.
And other subclass spell lists have benefited from the expanded spell chapter because Steel Wind Strike wasn't in the 2014 Player's Handbook. But when we made the decision to have this really spicy ranger spell appear in this book, we thought, oh, this is perfect for the War Domain Cleric as well.
Yeah.
Before we move on to their capstone, I should also mention that if the War Cleric uses their Channel Divinity to cast Shield...
All right, he is gonna say it. Okay, because he got distracted there. I think Todd unintentionally distracted him before he finished. So he's so far said that you're going to be able to use Channel Divinity to cast Shield of Faith or Spiritual Weapon, which might not sound all that fantastic, but he's going to explain why it's a lot better than it sounds.
Shield of Faith or Spiritual Weapon, it doesn't require concentration.
Oh.
Okay, so couple things revealed there. First off, War God's Blessing, that's a really nice enhancement. Really nice enhancement. You can cast Shield of Faith, that's like a +2 armor class, no concentration, and then Spiritual Weapon, he has just revealed that, yes indeed, the playtest version of Spiritual Weapon that requires concentration, it still requires concentration unless you are War Domain Cleric, because then you can use your War God's Blessing to use your Channel Divinity to do Spiritual Weapon with no concentration.
Nice.
And if you cast it, again, using your Channel Divinity rather than a spell slot. So extra spicy.
Yeah.
Finally, Avatar of Battle even has been tweaked in that before you got resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage, but only those damage types when dealt by non-magical weapons. We've removed that non-magical weapon part so that now you just simply gain resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage.
And I have not seen the next I mean, he already talked about they're still designing the next monster manual, so I don't know what the stat blocks are going to be in there. But everything we've seen over and over and over again is indicating that resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage from non-magical weapons, or immunity to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage from non-magical weapons is gone. And I predicted this a while ago. It had some negative response from some people, but nevertheless, it really appears to be happening. Just every case where it used to be there, at least in the Player's Handbook, is gone, and it could be surprised. It could show up in the Monster Manual again, but it really doesn't look like it to me.
Meaning that this new version of the War Cleric, more than ever before, will be able to, be this priest character who is throwing down in the middle of battle.
When you pre-order the
Okay, and so that is the Cleric. So, I mean, yeah, he's right. There was some somewhat significant changes to Light and War. I guess I'm so excited about Trickery. Trickery got the most changes, and Life got the fewest changes. And overall, with the Cleric, I think it's maybe received less changes than a lot of other classes we've seen. Certainly, I think the biggest changes we've seen are to the classes that maybe weren't as popular in the first place, like Barbarian, just massive changes to that kind of thing. And classes like Cleric are popular. There's not going to be a big list of changes, and the changes we see are mostly pretty minor. My only concern with it is Divine Intervention is something that if I was a DM, I'd want to have a conversation with my player who is playing a cleric about how they intend to use it, and just make sure that it's something that the rest of the table is okay with and that I'm okay with. If they plan to play that way at all. And I think most players are probably not even going to want to do super disruptive stuff with it. I don't think it's a huge problem, but it is something that is going to need a little bit of communication with your players, which is always a good idea. It never hurts to have a little bit of extra communication with your players and make sure you're all looking for the same fun time. Tomorrow they're going to go over the Bard, and the Bard is going to be interesting because with the Bard, the last version we saw in the playtest had magical secrets, access, the 3 big spell lists: arcane, primal, and divine. And they could choose spells from any of them with their regular level ups. The issue is that those big 3 spell lists we saw in Unearthed Arcana, they got rid of them, right? So now we're back to class spell lists. So we don't know what happened with the Bard, but I think we're going to find out tomorrow. And a lot of people have been wondering about this. I know, because of all the classes, this is maybe the one where we just had the least idea why they stopped playtesting it, and we're going to see tomorrow what they did with the Bard. And I will be back here and do my reaction to it. And I'm looking forward to being able to talk about where they went with the Bard as well. That's it for today. Thanks everyone for watching. Talk to you later.